In my restless dreams, I see that game. Silent Hill 2. I promised I'd play it someday, but I never did. Well, I'm playing it now. In my special place. Waiting to play the remake.
Silent Hill 2 is one of the most perfect horror games I've ever played. It makes me think about what constitutes a game being a masterpiece. Can a game stand tall despite its flaws if it succeeds in accomplishing its main goal? This game on the surface can look like an outdated experience, like its voice acting might seem subpar or a product of the time period that it was made. The writing can be very simplistic, the gameplay can be awkward and clunky. But this game is an example where, because all of its elements feed off each other so well, even what some can consider negatives add to the experience in a positive way. The average Silent Hill 2 fan isn't recommending you this game because it plays like a modern-day Resident Evil game. They're recommending it because of the atmospheric setting and music, because of that nostalgic charm. And in my humble opinion, the only way to get the most out of it is by contributing to the experience yourself. Get an old CRT TV, a fat PS2, mod it because don't spend $200 on a fucking PS2 game, a pair of headphones, a dirty basement, preferably your mom's, and go for a ride. For Christ's sake, don't play the HD collection unless that's all you got. I've never played it, but just by watching some gameplay, it strips away some key features and just dulls the vibe. Lack of fog, missing sound effects, streets looking less worn down. Sounds like all minor stuff, but it's amazing how much the little things in this game contribute to the overall experience. There are some instances where I won't jump in and immediately throw the purist flag in the air. This ain't one of them. About 2 years ago, I was on a retro gaming kick. I was fascinated by the prospect of playing tons of retro games, specifically on the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1. And I fell down the rabbit hole looking for iconic titles and hidden gems, anything that I could find to spike my interest. And when I fall down rabbit holes like this, I have a tendency to overreach and try and seek counsel with the purists, all of which will scream at you to get a CRT television, otherwise you might as well bash the console over your head. And I held out for the longest time, got an HDMI converter for the PlayStation 2, played a few retro titles like Crash Twinsanity for the first time, major Crash fan, hidden gems like Pitfall: The Lost Expedition, and some more obscure titles like My Street, that I remember playing as a kid. But there was one title that I ironically chose not to touch despite having the means, and that was Silent Hill 2. And this quickly put a huge damper on my retro gaming. I didn't touch any of it for a really long time. For one, there was just something telling me that the coolest way to experience it would be on a CRT in an old dirty basement. I want to completely immerse myself and get everything I can out of this iconic and mysterious classic. But even more important is I wanted to do something justice that had already served me for many years up to this point. Despite not playing Silent Hill 2, I've had a deep connection to it for a long time, because of its music, and music inspired by it, specifically the ambient tracks. It's hard to describe, this shit just pierces my brain, and within it spreads waves of endless emotion, a true sanctuary for the overthinking mind. And it goes beyond just sitting around and listening to this music and thinking, wow, being sad and mysterious is so cool. I'll listen to that shit when I'm happy, sad, when I'm being heavily introspective, when I'm just chilling out doing chores around the house while I write. It's just a great place to center yourself. It's like freeing yourself, but not in the escapism way. It's not dispelling any darkness in your mind, and it's also not dispelling the happiness and joy in you if you want to see it on the surface as sad music. It's almost as if you're existing in the space of whatever you're feeling, but not truly feeling it, because either you can't put your finger on why you feel this way, or you've accepted that you can exist in it without fully understanding it. It sounds like I'm just talking out of my ass, and that's because I am. But my ass could be onto something. The very nature of how weirdly peaceful and thought-provoking the music is brings so much life into moments in the game where otherwise you might just be thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be weirded out or confused. And it's not just the straight-up ambient tracks, it's all the music. With almost every new cutscene throughout the game, you'll be met with a new musical piece that'll make you question what's going on just as much as the cutscene is. You'll be running through worn-down streets riddled with monsters, seeing dead bodies and messages written in blood, and then you'll come across someone and the music will have some brightness to it, a nice chill beat. You look at the opening of the game, which is one of the most iconic openings of all time, and just perfectly sets the tone. You see James, your protagonist, looking in the mirror, running his fingers down his face, questioning himself. Is he even awake? Is the reflection he sees in the mirror himself? Is he ashamed of something? Is he scared of something? He takes a deep inhale and deep exhale. What is he psyching himself up for? He says, "Mary, could you really be in this town?" What has brought James here? Innocent curiosity, deception, an evil entity, insanity? This is all while in the background the track White Noise is playing. It's ironic because the very definition of white noise is something like all sound frequencies across the audible spectrum, whatever the fuck that means. But it plays into that idea a little of existing within a sea of negative and positive emotions, constantly dancing between bright and dark tones. But the way the melody is structured sounds like it's always returning to that darker side, or like the darker side always lingers even within the bright spots. It's almost like the game is subtly telling us that any brightness and innocence shown in our main protagonist, or all the people that he meets along the way, is merely a facade, and a poorly orchestrated one at that. You look at the bathroom James is standing in. It's fucking disgusting. Regardless if his first words seem desperate and innocent, he's standing in a shithole. Sometimes a setting in a movie or video game is all you need to reveal the truth behind a scene. Like how at the start of the game in the parking lot, James's car is just left parked with the door wide open. What innocent, insane human being would do that? You look at the introductions for the other two characters who were drawn to Silent Hill, Eddie and Angela. You first find Eddie puking in a toilet, also in a disgusting bathroom, talking about how he didn't kill the dead guy just outside over and over, to the point that it's obvious that he probably killed the dead guy outside. But he just keeps on going, I swear, I didn't do anything. You find Angela in a cemetery, and this is just fucking hilarious to me and one of my favorite scenes in the game, partly because it's got one of my favorite music tracks. But anyway, when you first approach her and ask her for some help and say that you're lost, she goes, "Lost?" It's the best line delivery in the entire game. But anyway, she's in a cemetery, talking about how she's looking for her mother, father, and brother. And I think it's abundantly clear what the game is trying to tell you, that she could be responsible for their disappearance. So we have three characters, all introduced in questionable settings, while feigning innocence. Whether they're fully conscious of it at all times is up to you. But it's clear that regardless of what brought them there, they all share something. All being drawn to this dark and hellish world. Broken down apartments and mental hospitals, smears of blood and rust covering the walls, no electricity, locked doors, fenced off streets, no people to speak of other than those who, like James, were drawn to the town. The only other sign of life being grotesque monsters scattered throughout, covered in what appears to be dried blood and flesh, each with increasingly weird designs, save for the nurses, including a man with a giant fucking pyramid for a head. Distorted and disgusting creatures born from the deepest and darkest pain and guilt of the human mind. The themes of confusion and disarray, of course, speak loudly through the iconic fog. With every step through the streets of Silent Hill, it almost feels like you're shaping a new world, or stepping into one where you don't know what to expect, even if you've traveled through that way before. It's great at maintaining tension without fully committing to jump scaring you every 5 seconds. The game lets you sit with that tension and doesn't let up for a majority of the game. When you're inside, it replaces that fog with darkness as you walk through predominantly tight corridors and small cramped rooms. That, accompanied with the fixed camera angles, always keep you blinded in some capacity throughout the game, which again plays into the themes heavily and keeps tensions high. The sound design also plays a major role here, because you can enter a dark room or corridor and start hearing your radio go off, accompanied with the footsteps and moans and groans from a monster inhabiting that area, or just the sound of breathing or occasional whispers that you never discover the source of. It's all so eerie and creepy. You could say to yourself, okay, well this is all like just normal horror trope play-by-the-number stuff. How does Silent Hill 2 stand out from the pack? To be honest, it's as simple as picking sounds that are memorable, scary, or satisfying to listen to. Human attraction is simple. Sometimes just the choice of a sound for a door opening and closing, the sound of a locked door, of footsteps, will satisfy you and simultaneously maintain that sense of dread and trepidation because of the environment that you're in. There are multiple times throughout the game where that's all it leaves you with in terms of sound. And quietness on its own can speak volumes when the only break from silence is the sound of you walking around trying to find your way, wondering if there's scary shit on the other side of a door or at the end of a hallway, or entering a room and hearing some scary music before it ever shows you anything. It's like the music itself is the jump scare, without it deliberately shouting in your face. Even small things like menu sounds play a major role in player satisfaction and fear. Whenever I booted up the game, hearing that first menu sound, followed by that scary-ass sound effect when you load a save, just hit me with a wave of excitement and anxiety every single time. The sound of just opening the map, another thing that's just satisfying every single time. I could rant about the setting, music, and sound design till the cows come home, because there's some of the main contributing factors that draw me to Silent Hill, to the point that I'm questioning if I killed somebody. Well, that and the premise given to you at the start. This game's story is like any horror game. Something's wrong, and you gotta find out what. You get a letter from your dead wife asking you to meet her in your special place. That special place being a town. That ends up being an entity that draws people to it to punish them for what they believe to be sins, and reflect their innermost torment. It's quite the intriguing concept that has an infinite number of possibilities and explores very dark themes like rape, murder, abuse, and does so in a way that'll make you more disturbed or saddened the further you understand it, finding the truth buried within all the things you see in Silent Hill. And it's all heightened by this game's atmosphere and colorful cast of characters, which kept me invested all the way through, wanting to dig deeper and deeper to discover the truth behind Mary, James, and the town and its inhabitants. There's a great flow to it all. Everywhere you turn, there's a new weirdly intriguing or creepy thing waiting to happen. Every environment tells a story. Every cutscene is memorable and well performed. Again, on the surface, people could call the voice acting in this game just bad acting, but the point is, within the context of the story and how intriguing the aura surrounding Silent Hill is, these characters are supposed to sound unrealistic. It makes things more creepy. All of them take on this childlike demeanor that is hilariously pathetic, but sad at the same time. They react quickly to being offended or questioned for their reasons for being there. It's like this beautiful mix of them being victims of a trance, but at the same time deliberately running from things they've committed that they feel guilty about, and they fail miserably at doing so. Excluding Maria and Laura, I'm talking about James, Angela, and Eddie. Throughout the game, you learn more about them. Their history becomes clearer and clearer as the town itself gets progressively darker. They all have interesting stories to unpack and dissect, and that would take me forever, so I'm not doing it. I'd rather focus on something else, because the important thing to note here is that this is all from James's perspective. Although it's established through Angela and Eddie that he can see how the town is affecting the others, in a way, seeing that is just another part of how Silent Hill is manifesting all the possible paths he could go down, all the options that we can assume swim through his head. The way I like to see it is that each of the characters you meet represent the 4 possible endings of the game. The in-water or suicide ending. Throughout the game, we can see how Angela represents the suicidal tendencies present in James, especially through their second meeting. Whereas James is pleading to Angela not to commit suicide, the camera brilliantly doesn't show Angela's face, but instead focuses on James's reflection. Angela gives you her knife, which if you examine contributes to the in-water ending. There's a deeper story behind the knife, but from James's perspective, he's simply focusing on suicide. Then later on the burning staircase in their final meeting, she asks for her knife back. And when James refuses to, she replies, "Saving it for yourself?" And after James comes through with one of the most ridiculous lines in gaming, "It's hot as hell in here," Angela replies, "You see it too? To me, it's always like this." It's perfect. Again, highlights James's suicidal thoughts and at the same time confirms that again, throughout his time in Silent Hill, learning more and more about the people he meets was all just a part of him understanding his own inner thoughts, clearing the fog through smoke, if you will. The rebirth ending. I don't have a good explanation for this one, but this idea of the characters representing each ending is cool, so I'm sticking with it. I relate this ending to Eddie. As like Eddie, James just seems batshit fucking crazy in this ending, and taking zero responsibility for his actions. Killing someone ain't no big deal. Well, James completely embodies that energy here, as he rows his boat that's harboring a corpse. The corpse of his dead wife that he intends to revive through ancient magic. What the fuck? The Maria ending. I think it's fair to say by the title that this one relates to Maria. It's all about James's longing to have Mary back and in the form that he wants but refuses to accept. Maria is a version of Mary that's overtly sexual. This ending is about James committing to those inner desires and choosing the path of fantasy and ignorance. And it's completely up in the air whether James would be doomed to keep reliving the suffering of watching Maria die to reflect his murder of Mary, like how you see throughout the entire game, should he go this route. But each ending kind of puts James's fate into his own hands, so we can assume that he wouldn't have to suffer anymore. So basically, the Maria ending is the route of busting infinity nuts, and this is objectively the best ending, because that's much better than killing yourself, going batshit crazy, or the worst case scenario, living with yourself as a murderer and adopting a child. Ugh. Which brings us to the leave ending. Laura represents the leave ending. She represents James's remorse for killing Mary. She's a completely real person that was drawn to Silent Hill just to be a constant reminder of James's sins. Throughout the game, she's either deliberately sabotaging you by kicking the keys or locking you in a room with monsters. She's also constantly running away from you. It's almost like Silent Hill is telling James over and over throughout the game, James, you are a fucking asshole who does not deserve atonement for your sins. And that's why it will always seem to be out of reach, because you don't want to take responsibility. You just don't want to hurt anymore. If you want atonement, you have to earn it. James discovers the truth that Mary didn't die 3 years ago through her letter to Laura. Laura happens to be the one in the room when James finally comes to terms with what he did, and immediately he's belittled for it. This whole ending is about James running the gauntlet that is Silent Hill, accepting what he's done, and not taking the pussy way out by killing himself. And he even intends to adopt Laura in honor of Mary, whom Laura shared a hospital with and loved her like her own daughter. This is the good ending. Just to close with an interesting little tidbit, the tombstones in the graveyards representing Eddie, Angela, and James. It's cool how James's grave is the only one that isn't partially filled, meaning he always has had a chance to change his fate, while Eddie and Angela were always doomed to go down a path that will lead to their demise. I just thought that was really cool. But anyway, so ends the I'm trying to be smart portion of this video. Due to the nature of Silent Hill being so open-ended and deep, I had no idea how to approach talking about the story other than, story is good and interesting. I am stupid. I have this love-hate relationship with horror games, specifically ones with good and intricate stories. They're always so shrouded in mystery, to the point where I'm like, great, I can't wait to not understand this fully and then spend literally an entire day on this script wrestling with my thoughts, trying to uncover deeper meanings, watching cutscenes over and over just to sound smart in this review. In a way, you can connect this right back to Silent Hill, going through the trenches to uncover some true mystery in the end. But yeah, Silent Hill 2 is a beautiful game that I had fun trying to learn more about. So we have setting, music, sound design, a colorful cast of characters, and an intriguing mystery behind it all. How about gameplay? If you wanted to deduce the gameplay down to its simplest form, it's primarily a case of going door to door, finding out 80% of them are locked or jammed, finding an open one, discovering a key to a locked one, or an item that could open up a pathway to a locked one, getting smacked a couple times in the face by monsters, solving a riddle, leaving a large area, running to the next one, rinse, repeat. Doesn't sound like much, but one, finding keys to shit, especially in scary environments, is always mega satisfying. And two, the game has a lot of charm while you're doing these things, which made me so eager to get to the next door I discover is locked, to go from one inaccessible room to the next, having a jolly old time, because this game is fucking amazing. There's nothing like that old school style where you see a still image instead of shit happening in real time where you're about to interact with a lock or a puzzle and just seeing the image disappear. There's just certain things you can only get from the old games. I love the little subtitles that appear when you try to interact with things, reflecting James's inner dialogue sometimes. Interacting with something like a bookshelf and the text reading, "This is a bookshelf. I have no interest in this right now." It's so stupid and weirdly satisfying. I like approaching an important thing you need to investigate, and the game is like, this is a hole. Will you reach in and see what's inside? Yes or no? Of course I'm gonna fucking reach in and see what's inside. But that little message just made me much more anxious to do so. It's good foreplay. And the game does it multiple times without it actually scaring you, but you will be a little scared. Like I said before, I love the sound of pulling up the map. Some good ASMR. And it's always fun to look at it and see if you've fully explored an area. This game without a map would be a fucking nightmare, I can't imagine. But it always serves as your constant guide. Corridors and rooms of whatever current building in will, for the most part, be tight as fuck and all look exactly the same. All the difficulty from remembering where to go to enemy encounters all stem from that, and the fixed camera constantly switching and fucking up your view. But I like this because it made me feel less safe. The game defaults to tank controls to make it easier to dictate your movement when the camera switches, but fuck you, I don't care, 2D controls for the win. Probably what contributed to my playthrough feeling less safe. The game kind of forces you to back yourself into corners to progress, which ironically also plays into some of the themes. You by default have to feel some level of insecurity while getting past monsters. It's either back yourself into a corner and shoot, or try to run past and juke them and hopefully not get stopped in your tracks. I didn't interact with a good portion of the monsters in this game because I felt like just tanking the hit, running past them, and moving on with my life. Though at times it becomes almost impossible not to engage because it'll make your life easier in the long run. The monsters get increasingly more annoying with each new type you encounter, and luckily there isn't many types. The abstract daddies in the hotel are easily the most annoying enemies in the game for me, and look fucking stupid as hell to boot. I don't care if the story behind them is gross and fucked up and scary, they look like fucking retards. The nurses can be a mega pain in the ass if you let a pair of them corner you. A lot of times in the hospital, I found myself walking into a room and immediately just getting smacked in the fucking face, before the screen even loads in. You will get used to them smacking you in the face over and over if you're someone like me, who likes to play the "I'm a pro Resident Evil player" card. I don't shoot the zombies, I just run past them. I'm someone that in horror games or any games that might imply a scarcity of resources will preserve ammunition like it's my newborn child. By the end of the game, I had hundreds of ammo to pour into the final boss encounters because of that. But does it even really matter when some of the boss fights don't even require you to fight the fucking boss? In my first encounter with Pyramid Head, I was shooting him for minutes, only to get killed in one hit. I didn't feel like wasting my time, so this was the one spot in my playthrough, okay, I'm lying, I did this for the double Pyramid Head fight too, where I looked up if the fight was time-based or had any sort of triggers. Upon re-entering the fight, I discovered I could get him in a loop that turned it into one of the funniest boss encounters I've ever had in a video game. I just realized I never really talked about Pyramid Head. I always found his design kind of fucking stupid. It's definitely striking and memorable, but I always found it just so goofy. The few cutscenes he gets in the beginning are disturbing as fuck though, where it's implied that he's like raping the other monsters in total PS2 fashion, just folding models into each other like a pretzel. But with like the moaning and the sound effects, it's pretty off-putting. Like that shit's fucking weird. But yeah, all the bosses and enemy encounters in the game mostly play out the same. Run to every corner of the room and pew pew pew. Or run around and be annoyed that a dude whose whole identity is being fat can chase you around endlessly and not get tired. Then you just say fuck it and take the shots as you give them. The puzzles and riddles you come across throughout the game aren't like super thought-provoking, but they are satisfying. Maybe because I was playing on normal for both riddle level and action. I will say I do like difficulty settings that are separated into different aspects. I loved when Last of Us 2 did this, because you could basically strip away the need to conserve ammo but still keep the action hard. Upon a second playthrough, I'll probably play on hard riddle difficulty. Riddle difficulty, that sounds funny. Probably the most memorable one is the hanging criminals puzzle for me, where you have to choose which of them are innocent. And it's not just a case of keep pulling all the ropes till you're right, the game tells you you'll be punished for choosing the wrong option. So it'll make you sit there and really contemplate what you want to go with, and I loved that tension. The game is structured into 4 or 5 separate levels, in quotations, and in between them there's usually a break where it's all about running to the next one. And this is likely a time that'll dull the experience for you a little, if you don't like to reflect with a brief moment of reprieve as you take 2 years to row across a lake, or you're not a fan of just sitting idly by and admiring James's glorious hips swaying in the wind. But the game makes it all worth it when you run down an endless staircase to Toluca Prison, hearing a loud and disturbing horn that you can't even place. When you first pull up to the Lakeview Hotel off the boat and hear that beautifully haunting music. So satisfying. This is all just world building, it's tension building. If you don't let your attention span get in the way of this shit and just completely immerse yourself in the game, that's where the reward comes from. It doesn't matter if you're walking for 2 straight fucking hours. If you listen closely and just immerse yourself in the walk. Alright, anyway. Running back and forth between previously explored areas, specifically after the hospital section, can feel a little bit like a drag. But it also gives you a chance to stock up on ammo and health, as new stuff spawns once the town is in the dark. So the game does reward you for not just running to the waypoints to start the next section. If you go to old areas, they have some new goodies. The times within the large areas do reward you for exploring as well, regardless of every single door in the fucking place being locked. I would much rather have 1,000 doors locked and inaccessible than to go through 100 rooms with a good portion of them being empty. I'm a search every nook and cranny guy. So if going down the end of the hall to check a room is not going to be worth my time, don't even let me open the fucking door. Let me waste as little time as possible investigating. Like I said, there's a bunch of endings to this game, so naturally the entire time the idea of missing something is giving me more anxiety than the game itself. It gives the game a lot of replayability, but still, I hate missing shit. But the good news is your endings are highly dependent on shit you're probably just doing or not doing by accident. I don't know how the fuck someone could discover the multiple endings for this game without knowing they exist and how to trigger them. It's fitting I'm talking about this because I can't even find a single ending for this video, because I hate missing shit. And if this script somehow manages to end and make it to YouTube, it'll be by accident. Silent Hill 2 is a game that can be explored deeper and deeper till infinity. Through its story, its music, through the many sounds and hidden messages sprinkled throughout the game. And while I can't sit here and make sense of everything, I can at least allow myself to be entranced by all the ways this game urges me to jump into that dark hole with no bottom in sight. Much like everybody else in Silent Hill, I don't even know why I'm here. But I feel like I belong here. Like it's our special place. Oh yeah, that's right. I was looking for my subscribers. But how? Why am I looking for them? My subscribers died of that damn disease 3 years ago. Could they really be here? How could they be? Dead people can't leave comments. But if you're alive and enjoyed this content, leave a like, comment, and perhaps subscribe, and I just might make some more.